day 3 for preliminary hearings to see if artist David is going to stand on trial for the murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. All this has been is he going to trial? This is not saying he's guilty or not. It's presenting evidence. And I'm your boy, Unico Williams. Do you hear me with Unico Williams? You got to keep it locked in right here because we're going to be doing this thing until it is concluded, okay? So days 1 and 2 were basically this. Here's some purchases that he made that would seems like a murder kit. Also, here's some receipts. Also, here's some tickets that he took her to London. There's also a lot of evidence that says that here's the motive. So they're trying to start motive. That's what the prosecution is trying to do. Give you motive and give you a little glimpse into the evidence that they have. And then on the other end, you got David's, the defense. They're trying to poke holes in everything. So it's like, did y'all handle the evidence correctly? Did you touch things that you shouldn't have touched? Did you, did you put in particular gloves? Why didn't you take this evidence with you? Why'd you leave it at his house? So they're just trying to poke holes in everything because this is just the beginning. Because even if he's found guilty after trial, all that type of stuff, they still can appeal and do all those things. So let's get into day 3. So day 3 started off kind of, shaky. And before any witness testimony was heard, Judge Olmedo went on the record regarding an apparent violation of her media order after learning that a shared Google Doc file allegedly allowed a live transmission of the proceedings on Wednesday. So despite the court's strict position on live transmission from inside the courtroom, the reporter in question was asked to leave the proceeding. How did they find out about that? But I mean, very clever. We want to know what's going on in that courtroom. Why is it closed off like this? We want to know. So Prosecutor Beth Silverman then brought up a separate issue that she wanted on the record, telling the court that a woman previously seated in the gallery had approached and made inappropriate comments to her. She also wanted a grand jury witness seated in the courtroom removed. Private investigator Steve Fisher. She also claimed he had inappropriately interacted with attorney Patrick Steinfeld, who represents the family of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Let's not forget the parents' involvement in this thing, and they had to have a civil lawyer for this particular thing. But also, we know that they may have a hand in this, but we'll just keep going, okay? Not the murder, but she shouldn't have been around no grown-ass man like that. Steinfeld clarified on Fisher's behalf and told the judge that he approached Fisher, not the other way around. So now they back and forth. Fisher was instructed to leave the courtroom due to grand jury rules, which he did so with grace. So after the on-the-record discussion is concluded, Silverman and Steinfeld appeared to engage in a tense exchange in the courtroom. Again, we were talking about they had just done a case against each other recently, so they think that it's a lot of tension. So, in a tense exchange, so with Silverman overheard whispering, but loud enough, "Push me, you'll see how far that goes, and I'll pull your badge." They going there. Defense attorney Blair Burke then continued her cross-examination of LAPD criminalist Lauren Wallace by focusing on evidence that was either not collected or not tested during the investigation. So Wallace testified again. That was a big part of yesterday. Like, okay, y'all got this evidence. How was it handled, right? She did note that certain other items were collected for reasons unrelated to biological evidence. Berk also questioned Wallace about a third electric handheld saw found in the closet. Some suspected that this saw was missing. That was neither collected nor subjected to additional forensic analysis because investigators determined it lacked forensic value. So Wallace, LAPD be fucking up, I ain't gonna lie. Wallace further says she observed what appeared to be jugs of fake blood and trays in the garage. Presumptive phenolphthalein testing was negative and was documented in her report. The fake blood was not collected or logged into evidence. So we know that he gets into these videos and it's all about being a weirdo and all that type of stuff and the dark thoughts and weird behavior. But he did have fake blood, so I don't know. That could come up later. Berk also asked whether Wallace documented a large box containing a burn cage, to which Wallace responded she did not, adding that she was never instructed to search the second floor where the box burn cage was located. On redirect, prosecutor Beth Silverman, that's one of the things that he bought, a crematorium, if you will. That's what people are trying to say that it is, allegedly. that he ordered from Amazon, along with all the other stuff he was ordering. It's all in the same gap. So maybe at some point, allegedly, he was going to burn her and cremate her, but then did it the way that whatever he did it. If he did it. So Wallace explained that sometimes, even after evidence is collected, it is not automatically tested, as detectives and forensic analysts work together to determine which items are most likely to have useful DNA evidence. So the next witness for the people was LAPD criminalist Lisa Alejandro, a 26-year veteran of the department who specializes in trace evidence analysis. So again, this is like preliminary stuff, but it's going to get deeper at trial and with all the different specialists and things that they're going to bring into this thing. But her examination centered on the inflatable pool and Celeste's clothing recovered during the investigation. So with the inflatable pool, she identified hairs, fibers, plant material, and possible foam-like flakes using a stereo microscope. So Alejandro also documented 4 distinct areas of damage to the pool, describing a combination of straight and irregular cuts, some of which penetrated completely through the material. In one of the prosecution exhibits, Alejandro testified that several blue plastic fragments submitted by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office physically fit into a missing section of the pool, like a puzzle piece. She also says several additional, don't forget, that was on the list too, inflatable pool, you put it, She also says several additional blue fragments shared the same characteristics as the pool material and could have originated from it, but she cannot definitively conclude they were physical matches because portions of those fragments were missing. So Alejandro then testified about her examination of Celeste's clothing with brutal photographs displayed of the garments. The clothing was in poor condition with a strong odor and significant deterioration and heavy soiling. The clothing, which included a pair of Skechers socks, a Victoria's Secret undergarment, a heavily soiled Forever 21 tube top that may have originally been yellow, and black leggings that appear to have been cut in half, all were wet, covered in dirt and insects. Alejandro explained that the heavy soiling prevented her from performing some of the comparison testing she had been asked to conduct. So while examining the leggings, she recovered dark blue and medium blue plastic fragments that were visually similar to those submitted by the examiner office. So exhibits also showed a separate black fragment that was compared to the leggings. She testified that she collected hairs, fibers, other trace particles, and 2 yellowish stains from the black fragment using sterile swabs, but could not complete the analysis because of the deteriorated condition of the clothing. So like during the cross-examination, defense attorney Berk questioned the scope of Alejandro's analysis, pointing out that her fragment comparisons were based on physical characteristics, but were not exhaustive. Berk also asked about the hairs, plant debris, and other trace materials recovered from the inflatable pool, with her explaining that some debris naturally fell onto the examination paper during her inspection, while other material was manually collected. Berk pushed on her previous testimony regarding possible footwear impressions observed on the pool. The criminalist testified that her attempt to lift the impressions using an electrostatic dust print lifter was unsuccessful, explaining that the pool's uneven, thick surface or the possibility that the impressions were not made in dust could all have prevented the recovery. So again, poking holes in what they can poke holes in. Silverman's next witness was LAPD detective William Roker, a 9-year veteran assigned to the Robbery Homicide Division's Investigative Support Unit, who specializes in cellular records analysis. Roker, who also serves on the FBI Violent Crime and Cellular Analysis Task Force and previously worked for Verizon Wireless Law Enforcement Division, testified that he was asked by lead detective Joshua Byers to analyze 2 identifiers, one associated with David's cell phone and another tied to David's Tesla or International Mobile Subscriber Identity. Using historical cellular records and Tesla connectivity data, Roker mapped the movements of both devices over several dates in April and May 2025. According to his analysis, David's phone and the Tesla appeared to travel together from his house toward a remote area off of State Route 154 in Santa Barbara County, near where investigators later recovered evidence. Roker testified that on April 24th, 2025, an outgoing call from David's phone to Celeste Rivas Hernandez was routed to voicemail while the vehicle was traveling north, indicating her phone was either turned off on airplane mode or outside network service. Interesting. He also identified additional trips in early and late May in which both the cell phone and Tesla data show the devices traveling in tandem. Both devices traveling in tandem between David's home and the same general Santa Barbara area before returning back to Los Angeles. The court was also shown maps of the cell phone tower data, a Tesla charging station in Santa Ana that matched the vehicle's infotainment records and the location where Celeste's passport was later recovered. Well, starting to put them together. So Rucker testified that the cell phone records consistently corroborated the Tesla data, showing the two devices traveling in unison during the relevant time periods. So now they're matching the Tesla traveling along with his phone and her phone, or what his attempt at her phone, something to that effect that went right to voicemail, essentially saying they was together and he was somebody found the past. So let's get into the afternoon, because they went to recess for a hot second. So after the lunch recess, the direct examination of the detective Rucker continued as he further explained how David's cellular records and Tesla data allegedly tie him to locations where evidence was found after she was murdered. David was seen smiling, nodding, and casually speaking to his attorneys and prior to the afternoon proceedings. Throughout the course of the week, he's been relaxed, calm, and non-reactive. So the detective finished his direct testimony by detailing that he reviewed multiple sources to determine when Burke's Tesla was last driven. According to his analysis, surveillance footage, license plate reader data, and Tesla records, the vehicle was not moved or driven between 2 p.m. on July 29th and September 5th, 2025, when investigators ultimately recovered it. This corroborated previous law enforcement testimony about the last time the Tesla was driven. During cross-examination, defense focused on what they perceived as limitations of Detective William Rucker's cellular analysis. They established that Rucker's analysis in this case was based on a call detail records and Tesla IMSI records obtained from cellular carriers and not GPS data. Rucker also confirmed that so they're trying to say like, hey, Verizon might have said that the phone was here, but they don't really know that. But he said the phone did not personally examine the device for any GPS information. So they didn't do that. LAPD be fucking up, I'm telling you. He also testified that he did not conduct any drive testing in this case, explaining his conclusions relied on timing, advanced data, and cell tower records rather than field testing. So when he got pressed about the precision of his analysis, Rucker agreed that the records could not point to an exact latitude or longitude, but maintained they provided accuracy of how far a device was from a particular cell tower. They pulled up one of the maps showing cellular activity near his home, and Rucker agreed that based solely on the cell phone tower data, he could not state that David's phone was conclusively at the residence. He explained that the records showed the device was consistent with being in the area of his house. Defense also elicited testimony that the records technically could not identify who was inside the vehicle or who was definitively driving it on the dates discussed. Rucker agreed that he could not determine the driver's identity from the Tesla records, but said investigators reached their conclusion that David was allegedly driving by analyzing the vehicle's movements alongside the corresponding cell phone data that belongs to him. So they're trying to say, we can't say who was in the car. All we can do right now is put two and two together that Tesla was moving and that phone was moving and they was in tandem together. So that's all I could really say. So the defense also pointed out potential discrepancy between the latitude and longitude coordinates displayed on one of the exhibits, which marked where Celeste's passport was recovered. He noted, however, that these weren't his markings. In the coordinates previously provided in court by California Highway Patrol officer, testified that while the numbers were not identical, they were very close and reflected essentially the same location. The people's next witness was a criminalist, Samantha Tosh, who testified she has worked in the department's DNA unit for 18 years, analyzing biological evidence such as blood, saliva, Tosh explained the crime lab's quality control procedures, telling the court that so now they got to get into it and be like, hey, can you explain to us how this evidence could not be tampered with? So Tosh testified that she developed a full DNA profile from a toenail sample collected from Celeste's body during the medical examination, as well as a reference DNA profile from a cheek swab provided by Mr. Burke. Well, by David. She then compared these reference profiles. So they got, hold on. So they used during the medical exam, as well as a reference DNA profile from a cheek swab provided by David. She then compared those reference profiles to biological evidence recovered during the investigation. According to Tosh, multiple blood stains collected from inside David's Tesla, including stains in the trunk and lower storage compartments, produced single source female DNA profiles that included Celeste's DNA. She testified that the statistical analysis showed the DNA profile was 1 septillion times more likely to have originated from Celeste than from an unrelated individual. Tosh also testified about a blood stain recovered from a black rubber mat in the garage, although that sample yielded only a partial DNA profile because less genetic material was available. She said 15 genetic markers were consistent with Celeste's DNA, making it approximately 20 quadrillion times more likely to have originated from Celeste. This is more than 100 times, 2 times, quadrillion times more likely to have originated from Celeste than anyone else. Okay, out of the shadow of a doubt, it's her, right? In the garage. It's her blood in the garage. Let's not forget that. We passed the Tesla, now we're in the garage. Tosh went through additional DNA testing conducted on evidence recovered from David's house and garage. And she testified that blood stains found on a rowing machine, a charger, and a green tarp each produced DNA profiles consistent with Celeste, with the statistical analysis indicating the samples were approximately 1 septillion times more likely to have originated from Celeste than from anyone else. Of note, DNA recovered from a black trash bag produced a mixed DNA profile from 4 contributors, including 2 males, one being David, but Celeste was excluded. She went on to testify the bloodstains found on hand wipes produced a single source female DNA profile consistent with Celeste, excluding David as the contributor. So now we're starting to think about, are they trying to build a case that he did it and had help? So during cross-examination, Berk emphasized the limitations of the DNA evidence presented. She first established that Tosh was not the primary analyst who conducted the DNA testing in the case, but was the technical reviewer for work by another analyst, but indicated she contributed to the report. Tosh also acknowledged that prosecutor Beth Silverman reviewed with her the subjects she would be asked about before her testimony so she could familiarize herself with the reports. Some might come back and say, is that coaching or something to that effect? That could come back. So Berk then turned to the science itself, eliciting testimony that while DNA testing can identify whether a person's genetic material is present, it cannot determine how the DNA was deposited, when it was left behind, or what activity caused it to be transferred. Tosh agreed DNA can remain on an item for weeks, months, or even years, and that lab testing cannot distinguish between DNA deposited through direct contact and DNA that could be transferred by other means. Berk continued to focus on the fact that DNA testing cannot explain how genetic material came to be an object. Tosh agreed she could not determine how or when Celeste Rivas Hernandez DNA was deposited on the rowing machine, and testified the same applied to the tarp, garage mat, and charger. Berk also questioned whether the DNA necessarily originated from blood. Tosh responded that she could not make that determination based on the DNA testing done alone, and also acknowledged it was possible the DNA instead came from skin cells. It's the exercise machine, right? After the afternoon break, Berk turned back to the trash bags recovered during the investigation, referring to a second black trash bag containing wipes with brown stains. Berk established that the interior of the bag was not swabbed for DNA. Tosh also confirmed that no DNA from David was identified on that trash bag and reiterated that the DNA recovered from the wipes was consistent with Celeste, while David was excluded as a contributor. So we know she'd been at his house. I mean, if if they somehow can skate past the murder, you're still dealing with a minor. So it ain't just because you might get out of that, you still. Burke revisited the separate trash bag containing mixed DNA profile, questioning Tasha about the lab's conclusion that the sample was consistent with 4 contributors, at least 2 males. Tosh repeatedly testified the mixture was consistent with 4 contributors. Berk then questioned the use of STR mix software, noting the software generated statistical estimates for each contributor and ultimately excluded Celeste from the mixture. So when Berk asked whether David's inclusion meant he was a possible contributor, not a definitive one, Tosh ultimately agreed that that characterization was fair. The attorney also brought up a number of people possibly going in and out of Berk's garage and David's garage. Tosh also stated that characterization was fair as well. During the redirect, the prosecution is back. Silverman clarified the distinction between what is possible and what is supported by DNA analysis, citing that a sample would not be reported as matching the victim unless it was consistent with her DNA profile. She agreed. That was correct. So the last day witness of the day was Dr. Grant Hull, the deputy medical examiner with the examiner's office. Hull testified he has worked in the office for 5 years, performed 2,500 autopsy examinations. You know, they got to bring that baseline. How much of an expert are you? And he's testified at least 40 times in court. And he told the court he conducted an autopsy on the remains identified through dental records as Celeste. Hull testified that at the time of her death, she measured 5 foot 2 inches and weighed 71 pounds. He described the remains as markedly decomposed, explaining that the condition significantly interfered with the autopsy examination. Hull also observed evidence of trauma to the body consistent with dismemberment in the extremities that noted that Celeste was wearing braces at the time her remains were examined. So, like I said, we'll get to all that. Like, again, they're just trying to set the baseline. Is he going to trial or not? Do they have enough evidence to make this worth going in front of a jury of his peers for David? I don't know. But look, that's day 3. So we'll get into day 4 as we continue giving you. I got all this for you right here on this channel. So make sure you like and subscribe. Comment what you think and how you feel. And you know, we'll go through this together. Because lock it in right here on Do You Hear Me with Unico Williams. I holla. Thanks for watching. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. Don't forget, every Thursday, the full podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and mama, I'm on Spotify. Overall 99 ENT bring you videos from Friday all the way to Friday. So be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Again, thank you so much.